Hello and welcome to the Arts Are Education Talk It Up podcast, where we talk to national, state, and local leaders who are working to make arts education part of every student's life. I'm Jim Palmerini, your host. This podcast is part of our exciting new series called Meet NCAS, in which I talk to representatives of the member organizations of the National Coalition for Art Standards. They are the ARE sponsoring network. NCAS is a collaboration of 8 national arts and arts education organizations who actively work to ensure quality standards-based arts education opportunities for every student. So weekly, I've been talking to arts education leaders, their leadership about the organizations themselves and their perspective on the foundational focus of NCAS, that is K-12 arts education standards and their importance to their members and to the field. So today, I am talking to Dr. Jennifer Katona, the Executive Director of the Educational Theater Association. Welcome, Jen. So good to see you today.
Nice to see you. Thanks for having me.
All right. So before we get started to talk about the Educational Theater Association, full disclosure, I was a longtime employee of the Educational Theater Association and am still a proud member of EdTA. Got to say that before we move forward. So let's get started, Jen. Tell me about EdTA, its history and mission and goals a little bit.
Yeah, EdTA, as you know, has been around for 93 years. And our primary goal is to provide support network for theater educators. And we really focus on the word educators because it's not just our teachers, but anyone who is working in theater in any capacity. We think about our organization in 3 spheres around how we support our students through the International Thespian Society and our troupe model, and offering our International Theater Festival, which happens every summer and really celebrates student work. We work with our members who are our theater educators through our online learning center and our curriculum-based resources, our webinars, our teacher education conferences. And then we have the Educational Theater Foundation, which really focuses on the field and advancing the field. And right now our focus is around supporting our members through excellence and growth grants and scholarship and award opportunities, and advancing the field through racial equity through some of our, through our Craig Zaden Pathway program and our Jumpstart program, putting new middle school theater programs around the country. So it's a bit about the work we do. We really want to ensure that all students have access to a quality theater education. And we want to make sure we do that by touching all the pieces and all the people that might have an impact on that.
So I have to ask, because I know this, tell our audience just how many student members there are in the International Thespian Society, approximately.
I know we reach thousands and thousands. You probably have the exact number, Jim. I don't have that.
I know that it exceeds more than 120,000 members.
I was going to say, it's so hard. It is such an exciting thing to see not only the current student members, but when we look back over the 93 years, the alumni list and so many names that you would recognize. All have gone back to, I was a thespian, I was this troupe. Wayne Brady just did a quick thing for us, and I'm troupe number, and he names his number. It leaves such an indelible mark, the number of students, and when our teachers are constantly posting, oh, I saw my alumni in this Broadway show or on this TV show. So there are thespians everywhere, thousands and thousands of thespians, which is exciting.
I've met them on airplanes. I've met them hiking. I've met them in every possible imaginable circumstance. So it's an amazing thing. And the foundation is a more recent thing. And I love the idea that it is working so intently to broaden access and equity and addressing issues of racial diversity in our current environment. So that's really wonderful. So let's talk a little bit about standards.
Great.
Why are standards for theater education so important for K-12 theater education? And I'm putting the emphasis here all the way across
Yeah.
the grade spectrum. So
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. For us and for EdTA and for me personally as a theater educator, we talk a lot about a consistent student experience. So every student should have access, when we say, right, every student should have access to quality theater education, but what does that mean? And there are some fundamental tent poles that go along with the rigor of what a theater education should look like. And so the standards help ensure that. So sometimes folks feel like standards can be, are not necessarily in the arts, because arts is about creativity and about expression, and it absolutely is. But there's also a way to get there, and that there are tenets, and there's a process that our students need to go through, either in the acting field or playwriting or tech theater or dramaturgy or theater history. There really is a foundation that everybody needs. And so the standards make sure that our teachers across the country and every student gets that quality, because we can ensure that they are having a touch point at each of these areas in their curriculum. We also know that because theater is not a guaranteed curriculum, that a student won't necessarily have, unfortunately, a K-12 experience, but they might drop in 5th grade. It gives that teacher an understanding of, all right, well, what would a 5th grade curriculum look like? What are the standardized curriculum items that I should be talking to in the 5th grade? So I think even more important than maybe our colleagues in non-arts, standards provide a roadmap for our teachers, because we're not yet guaranteed that our students are going to have K-12 education everywhere they go. So we need those points of access and understanding and agreement across the country, that we all agree that this is what 5th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade curriculum should be looking like.
So I love your description of the standards as a journey and a series of touchstones, a guide, so to speak. So what do you say to an educator who is concerned about, oh, I have to meet all these standards, I have to change all my curriculum, why
Yeah.
do they make me do this? What do you say to them
Yeah.
to help them feel better?
Yeah, the nice thing about standards, and maybe it's maybe it's the word, right? But it's really, it's a map. It's everything we just said, right? It's this guiding post to take you on this journey. And so most of the time I find that standards are just guiding enough. They're just, I don't want to say vague, because that doesn't give them the rigor that they deserve, but they're just worded just enough that anything really can fit in there. So curriculum should not be running around trying to fit into standards. Standards are the boundaries, right? We do our best, most creative work when we are in boundaries. And so they just set those boundaries, but really they're endless within them, right? A student must express themselves creatively. Well, hey, I can do that through my lighting design, through my costume choices, through my acting choices, through my playwriting. It's really boundless. But yeah, we want to make sure that students are expressing themselves creatively. That's a checkpoint for us.
So do you think that those standards also serve as a validation of the
Yeah,
professional educator?
absolutely.
The notion that, well, it's just theater, anybody can teach theater,
Yep.
but the knowledge and skill as defined within
Yeah.
those boundaries.
Yeah. I don't think that, I think theater educators have not always done a great job at naming the rigor that goes into theater education. We have
Agreed.
been for so long kind of put in the enrichment category, and it is wonderful enrichment, and that's maybe where funding was, or that's maybe where we could be put in the schedule, and we're happy to be there. But we are a curriculum, we are a core subject area, and just like our math and English colleagues, there are a set of standards that have to be met. And so there are classes that have to be taken in a sequence in order to do that. And so it's really an advocacy tool. Teachers really should be seeing this as their document that says, this is a national standards that I need to meet. And so I can't just be Friday in last period when the kids are exhausted, right? I need to be at the table. I need to be in the school day. We have all the legislation that says that. We all have all the research that says why it's important. And the standards is just another tool in our toolbox to advocate for ourselves.
So in some ways, we've segued right into our third fundamental question, which, how have the national art standards, so many of them have been, so many states have adapted those standards. in the last 5 or 6 years. How do you think those standards have impacted the field, and more specifically, maybe even EdTA members, both students and teachers, thinking about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think any time that the standards have to come up for reapproval, I think again that fits into the advocacy because it reopens the conversation around theater, in this case theater, but in all the arts as a core subject area, right? So every time we have to name the standards and we have to look deeply at them, it's a chance for us to look at how many teachers are using them and how are we implementing them. So we really use them as our advocacy tool. The other conversation we're having a lot at EdTA is how to move standards beyond the theater classroom, or they're kind of typically in the high school theater classroom, but how to really push them down into K, right? You started with that, and really focus on our elementary colleagues, how to find a place for standards in our rehearsal spaces, with our teaching artists. They've kind of been relegated to the classroom as and in some ways, maybe not always in a positive light, but standards in our theater classroom, I mean, in our rehearsal spaces are just as relevant because it's the same skills. So it's really about skill development and how to use our theater spaces and our rehearsal classrooms, which sometimes are the only places we don't get to be in the classrooms. And so how do we make sure that our rehearsals are following them as well?
You brought up 2 points that I was going to go that space anyway, which was the after school space or rehearsal space, that there is so much rich learning that takes place. And
Absolutely.
we know that so many of our theater programs are confined to the after school environment.
That's right.
And also, you brought up teaching artists. I love the idea of the educator, the theater educator, collaborating with that teaching artist towards a common goal. We can get education east and talk about targets. So how do you see teaching artists using standards that can really move the needle a little bit in terms of the quality of the theater education experience?
Yeah, I mean, what I think is really exciting about where we are right now in the field is that the notion that a teaching artist is kind of this drop in. It was always like, oh, they're the favorite aunt or uncle. They come in and they play and they leave. And with all of our work in theater education around really formalizing the career of a teaching artist, that because a teaching artist is a little more freelance doesn't mean that their work is not any less rigorous. And I keep using that word with intention because if a teaching artist is coming in to prepare you to see a show, there's still a lot of standard-based learning that's happening because maybe they're choosing to focus on the design aspects of that show or a certain acting style of that show or the genre of that show or the playwright and the dramaturgy of that show. It's not just about coming in and giving you a plot synopsis. And maybe it once was, but it no longer is. And so they're coming in to do a pop-up class. They're coming in to do a master class. And so of course there's a standards around that because there's still a lot of teaching that's happening. It's the notion that these are kind of these, fun little afternoon activities. We've moved past that.
So this has been great. I want to ask you one more sort of wrap-up question.
Sure.
What would you say to an educator who is seeking to make the case because we talked about the standards as an advocacy tool, to an educator who is seeking to make the case to an administrator who is somewhat hesitant to add a curricular course in theater beyond the after-school space? How can these standards maybe help them make that case? Any thoughts about that?
It's such a big question, right? Because I would first say, every kid needs theater every day. Look at our mental health crisis in this country. But on the standard side of it, it's that same idea that the standards are built K-12. The standards are built to have a cohesive scope and sequence of learning. And if one school is not giving, for 3 years, if that one school is not giving a middle school, it's a disservice to that student who might get it at the high school, or it's an equity issue for that student who's getting it at another school, right? So the standards are a document saying, as a country, nationally, we are saying that this is what the curriculum should look like. We've moved past the time where you can opt in or opt in on that. this is essential to student learning, and and every student in our community or our district needs access to this. That word is very loaded right now, but really it's an equity issue around making sure every student gets the same education. They deserve it.
This is a great coda, because what you just articulated was, it's a civil rights issue.
Yeah.
And the access term, as you say, it's a loaded term, but access also means those standards at the K-3 level, which were truly sort of aspirational. But without those standards, how can you make the case for that access at that level? So,
absolutely. Yeah.
Jenn, I just want to say thank you for your time. And this was,
Absolutely.
because we're theater folks, we were passionate and engaged. I love that. So at that, I just want to say thank you so much. So if you want to learn more about the National Coalition for Art Standards, please visit www.nationalartstandards.org. A lot of really wonderful resources that can help any educator who is interested in art standards advance their field. And there is, I know this for a fact, there is so many wonderful resources for teachers and students both on the Educational Theater Association page. And for some reason, I happen to know this, the International Thespian Festival, ITF, is coming up here soon. You can learn all about it and register on
That's
the
right.
page. I would urge you to do that, because there's wonderful opportunity. And yes, that's right, arts are education for everyone. So sign the ARE pledge indicating your support for arts education. Urge your school board to pass the resolution to fund arts education in the 2023-24 school year and beyond. And yes, it's true, you can donate to Arts for Education to help us share the message at www.artsoreducation.org. So at that, Jenn, thank you so much for being here. Have a
Thanks again for having me.
great day, and signing off now.